Morning, Dan, and in for Amy is Pat Hughes, co-founder of the Illinois Opportunity Project, a free market public policy advocacy organization, illinoisopportunity.org. And Pat, yesterday in Jackson, Mississippi, Nigel Farage, he of the successful Brexit campaign, made an appearance for Donald Trump, not like President Obama made an appearance for David Cameron to wag his finger at Brits and tell them to vote against Brexit because it would be bad for them. But to say, there are parallels to what we were able to achieve in pushing back against ruling elites in the UK and what you can achieve pushing back against ruling elites in this country.
We reach those people who have never voted in their lives, but believe by going out and voting for Brexit, they could take back control of their country, take back control of their borders, and get back their pride and self-respect.
So it seems like there's parallel tracks that the Trump campaign is on right now from a messaging perspective. It is still an appeal to those people who feel like they have been fleeced by a government they finance, have been treated as less thans by a government that is supposed to represent their interests. That's kind of the base camp of Trump. It's a psychographic, not necessarily just a demographic. But then on the same token, on this other track, you have Trump running a message to minority voters specifically, but it's really, I think, a message to suburban whites that, the big government Democrats in charge of your cities and in charge of your lives, frankly, have done you no great service. In fact, they've been predatory. They've hurt you, and they've done so purposely, and it's time to change that as well. And I suppose there's an intersection between the appeals, but the tracks are running parallel at this point.
Yeah, and I think, Dan, that both tacks are very, very smart. The initial folks are the folks that are with him. They're going to stay with him. And then he's trying to broaden to a larger swath of voters, college-educated, white suburban voters, and appeal to some minorities that hopefully will come along as well, given the circumstance of minority communities in big cities throughout the country.
And there is some Koch support for this, like the Koch brothers. They're running ads in Senate races like Rob Portman's race in Ohio against former Ohio Governor Ted Strickland, who John Kasich defeated. And now they're not supporting Trump. The Kochs are staying out of that. But by running this message against Ted Strickland, are they not essentially kind of indirectly supporting Trump? Listen to this ad.
Every day, I really wonder if I'm going to have a job the next day. Any day I can come in and they tell me to go home. It's happened to a lot of people around here.
We're going to put a lot of coal miners out of business.
Seeing Ted Strickland stand with Hillary Clinton after what she said really hurts us here in coal industry. I don't think you can trust Ted Strickland to stand up for coal. There's no way he's going to stand up for us.
Freedom Partners Action Fund is responsible for the content of this advertising.
And I'll tell you what, in Illinois, you go to coal country in Illinois, down in Franklin County in southern Illinois, where we've got more inert energy in coal than Saudi Arabia does in oil. That message plays as well. So that's a kind of the white working class message, if you will. And that's focused on the Senate race, but it provides residual benefit to Trump.
Yeah, and how dumb is Hillary? That comment is so impolitic. You can say, okay, I believe in global warming and I want new energy and all these other things and everything's on the table. But to say I'm going to put coal miners who have been a backbone of our country and what has become of our country over the last last 100 years is just incredible that she'd make a comment like that.
Well, I mean, it's consistent with her overall philosophy of the economy. Remember, businesses don't create jobs. That was her you didn't build that moment. Government creates jobs. Well, for more on these and other topics, we're happy to be joined again by Steve Cortes. He is a Trump campaign surrogate. He's also a member of the Trump Campaign Hispanic Advisory Council. Steve, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Good morning, Dan. Good morning, Pat.
Morning. So what of Trump's, just referencing the Hispanic Advisory Council and the focus on immigration, particularly immigration from south of our border, what of Trump's pivoting on immigration? How do you see that, and how is it being perceived as you interact with representatives of the campaign as well as Trump supporters generally?
Right. Yeah, well, I think there's a shift going on, and there's a potential softening. Now, he has not announced any new policy yet, so I think that we need to be clear about that. But what I think he's doing here, he's being accused by the media and by the left of flip-flopping. I don't see it that way. I think what he's doing is real leadership, and he's saying, look, on one end, there's amnesty. There's granting citizenship. That is off the table. We're not going to do that. We're not going to reward people for breaking the law. But on the other end of that policy spectrum, on the other polar end, would be mass deportation. I think he's backing off of that it's not morally or logistically possible. And he's saying there's a wide range, a wide spectrum then between those two poles, and where should we land? And I think one thing he said on Hannity last night is one thing we don't want to do is break up families. So I think that's a wonderful place to start. And what he's done, I think, is very humbly reach out to Latino activists and leaders and say, we want to earn your votes. We want to earn your support and respect. Part of that is coming up with a sensible solution to immigration. The present immigration system is clearly broken. It's not working for America. We must secure our border. But how do we deal sensibly and fairly with illegals who are already here? And so that's the process that he's going through right now, and we expect to have official statements coming out very soon from the campaign.
Steve, in some of the most recent comments that Mr. Trump has made, he's indicated that he thinks that the laws in place are strong laws and that they just need to be enforced. And he's commented on starting with, of course, deporting people who commit felonies. But isn't that ground zero of where this debate is headed, and a little bit different than where he started when he was claiming that the laws of the country were not being enforced, or they were not strong enough with respect to this? To explain that.
No, listen, clearly he is shifting, all right, but I don't think that's flip-flopping. I mean, I think he's evolving on the issue the more he learns about it, and I think as an Hispanic who supports Trump, I think that's important. And by the way, too, I would mention this. A lot of Hispanics, like my father, who came here and did it legally, and it's a cumbersome process. It's not easy to become an American citizen, to get the proper visas, to go through the entire process. It's expensive. It's time-consuming. But people like my dad and millions of other Hispanics who did it the right way, they often resent the fact that there are then cheaters who come in and essentially hop in line in front of them and do it the wrong way. And on top of that, not only is it unfair, but they then compete in the labor market, and illegals, because of their status, are almost always paid very low wages. They compete in the labor market against a lot of black and brown people who occupy a high percentage of manual labor jobs. So it's something we need to fix. And I think Mr. Trump is being very smart about saying, look, I have not made any. The only thing that's set in stone is we must secure the border and no path to citizenship. Other than that, everything is negotiable, and let's see what makes the most sense. Personally, what I'm going to recommend to him is people who have been here for a certain amount of time and people who have families here should be allowed to stay, not given citizenship, but be allowed to stay through a process. There have to be penalties. There has to be a process. There has to be proper vetting. But I think we should come up with a common sense scenario. People who are dangerous need to leave immediately, and we need to get more strict about how we police those folks and get them out of here as quickly as possible.
The Clinton Foundation has been a horn of plenty for the Trump campaign over the last week, and it looks like it's going to be through the November 8th election. How important is it, and how focused is the campaign on making the Clinton Foundation kind of a surrogate for Hillary Clinton and a referendum question? You know, it's like Bill rented out the Lincoln bedroom. She rented out the entire State Department, and now they're going to rent out the Oval Office as a family.
Right. And, look, we're Chicagoans. We all know about corruption, right? And sadly, we've had to live with it for decades here. But thankfully, the White House of the United States has really never been for sale. We've had some national scandals in the past. We've had Teapot Dome, other scandals in our history. But the presidency itself has never been for sale. And I think the American people are rightly worried that under Hillary Clinton, the presidency, the White House, could actually be for sale. The Clinton Foundation is a global slush fund. They spent $50 million on travel. This is not a foundation. It's an organization to enrich their peers and to allow them to live a lifestyle of a mogul. By the way, neither of the Clintons have really ever worked. She worked for a few years for the Rose Law Firm. Neither has ever worked in the private sector in their entire lives, and yet they are generationally rich. I think that is offensive to most Americans. They didn't earn that money. They globbed it off of us, off of the taxpayer. So I think we need a special prosecutor. I agree with Mr. Trump. The only way that we're going to resolve this question, because the DOJ has shown us that they are not impartial and they're not willing to uphold the people's rights. We need a special prosecutor to investigate this. And if we don't get that, regardless, I think the jury ultimately will be the American people in November. And I think the Clinton Foundation is going to be perhaps the most damaging reason that people will not vote for Hillary Clinton come November.
Steve, Republicans have a terrible time calling Democrats out for their bigoted social policies, the policies that, of course, have led to the problems that we have, of course, in the city of Chicago and in big cities throughout the country, failing school systems, incredible crime, single-parent homes, the whole 9 yards. And I saw that Mr. Trump went out and made a strong statement about that. How do you think that's going to play as the election goes forward? Because it's something as Republicans we don't have a tendency to do well.
Right. Well, I'm so glad that he's doing this minority outreach, because I think when it comes to Democrats, it's not that black lives matter, it's that black votes matter and brown votes matter. So they care very much about your votes, and then they say goodbye for 4 years and leave you, people of color, stuck in neighborhoods that are rife with crime, that have failing schools, and where their policies of government dependency create enormous despondency. So what we have been doing since the Great Society, what we have been doing, it's not making lives better for people of colors. In fact, it's making them worse. And even under this present administration, if we look at Hispanics, I'm very proud that Hispanic men have the highest workforce participation rate of any group in America. They're incredibly hardworking, hustling people. Yet, since the recession, Hispanic incomes have gone down. So they are not participating in this recovery. And that's really a shame. Hispanic household wealth is 1/10 of white household wealth. So what I would say to my fellow Hispanics and what I would say to people of color is Democratic policies are not working for you. They are taking you for granted. So please give us a chance. Free market policies, Trump policies can make your lives better. And even if we don't get their votes this time around, and who knows whether or not we will, because we're fighting an uphill battle, clearly. But even if we don't get their votes this time around, we want their votes in the future. And it doesn't have to be either or. We also want to convince some white voters who are sitting on the fence that we are compassionate. And then Mr. Trump, who doesn't often come across as caring, that he is caring. And he cares about the plight of people in the inner city and people of color. And he wants the rising tide to truly lift all boats in America. All
right. He is Steve Cortes, Trump Hispanic Advisory Council member. Steve, thanks so much for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
He joined us on our Turnkey.Pro answer line.